Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I am so excited about today's guest because while he does focus on helping our younger generations to be successful, everything we're going to talk about applies to everybody. And so please join me in welcoming Scott Stirrett to our program today. Welcome, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Perfect. Well, let me tell people just a little bit more about you. So Scott Stirrett is a social entrepreneur, author, and advisor focused on how people and communities grow and thrive in a volatile world. He founded Venture for Canada in 2013 and spent more than a decade building it into a national platform that helps early career professionals develop the skills, networks, and judgment to move forward in a messy, fast-changing conditions. Venture for Canada has supported more than 10,000 young people and raised over $80 million, working with partners including Employment and Social Development Canada, RBC Foundation, TD Bank, and Mastercard. Scott is the author of The Uncertainty Advantage, published by Dundurn Press, which offers research-backed strategies to make better decisions, bounce back from setbacks, and build career skills that AI can't replace. The book has been endorsed by Eric Ries, Sukhinder Singh Cassidy, and I know I didn't say that right, Amanda Lang, and Michele Romanow. Well, again, Scott, welcome. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Looking forward to this conversation.
Great. Well, I told people a little bit about you just now, but tell us a little bit more about how it is that you got to where you are today.
I grew up in Nova Scotia, Canada, and that's a smaller province on the East Coast, north of Maine. And after growing up in Nova Scotia, I went to Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., where I studied in the Georgetown School of Foreign Service. And while I was at Georgetown, got involved with a bunch of different entrepreneurial initiatives. And while I was at Georgetown, I did an internship at Goldman Sachs, and then I got a return offer to go work at Goldman Sachs in New York City. And then after working at Goldman Sachs, I quit and I founded Venture for Canada, which you provided context about in the intro. Mm-hmm. And I recently left Venture for Canada to pursue a new entrepreneurial path where I'm doing consulting work and working with a think tank called the Shortfast Institute, as well as doing work around spreading awareness around my book and the uncertainty advantage and how to help more young people learn to embrace the uncertainty in the world so that they can have more successful careers and happier lives.
I love that. And there certainly is so much uncertainty and there's a variety of reasons for it, and we can't solve those problems today. But I think, one of the biggest thing is due to technology, right? AI. As we're recording this, the Super Bowl took place, just a couple of days ago. And I don't know if you even got it in Canada, but it was, the big thing down here in the States is the Super Bowl commercials. I could have cared less about who was playing. And it seemed to me, now it wasn't quite right, but there were so many AI commercials. And, I love AI. I use it all the time as a tool, not to replace me, but as a tool. But it is something that's really scary. And so from the younger generation's perspective, how do you see AI?
I think that AI can be both a blessing and a curse. And I agree, there were a lot of AI ads with the Super Bowl. Some of the most watched ads were from Anthropic.
I love the Budweiser commercial, but that's always me.
Yeah. And, I think AI can provide an opportunity for young people to accelerate their careers through being more efficient, through having a constant brainstorming partner. through being able to outsource more redundant or monotonous tasks. But AI also poses a significant risk for young people in the sense of many jobs potentially being automated away. But also, I
Especially
think,
entry-level positions.
especially entry level. And I think the other big risk for a lot of young people is the over reliance on AI. And I've struggled with this too, of really making sure that I'm not outsourcing my brain to AI. So AI can be as
See, yeah.
yeah, yeah, totally. I can be lazy on some things. Like it's, if I'm, I'll just have AI draft this email, or I'll just have, and then I realize, hey, I'm not actually using critical thinking here. And I think one of the things that's going to be really important for young people and all people is to really figure out what are the things skills that you cannot allow to atrophy, that you need to keep on doing yourself. And then what are the skills that aren't really important that you can say, okay, you know what? AI is going to do this for me, and I'm okay with that.
Right. It's interesting. I predominantly use ChatGPT. It's named itself. It flirts with me. That's one of the funny things about AI, right? Everything you do is fabulous. But I've noticed recently when I was having it do some things, and a lot of times I'll have it write a first draft
Yeah.
of something, and it actually said, please review carefully and make sure that this is in your voice. And I thought, oh, that's new. Because I mean, how many of us, and I am guilty of this, cut and paste. Now I do usually glance over it and go, I don't even know what that word is, so I wouldn't use it. Or maybe this is, I want to add to it, or something like that. But and I was laughing when I said lazy, but it has made me lazy. But it's also saving time. And so there's kind of that balance, right? I can either agonize for 15 minutes over an email, or I can have, ChatGPT write it in 20 seconds.
Yeah, and it's something that it's really important on two different levels. I think the first is that people are increasingly discerning to be able to figure out what is AI generated and what isn't. And
yeah, it writes very glowingly, right? And uses a lot of M dashes. I'm like,
yeah, a lot of M dashes. By the way, you can change.
I can turn those off. Yes.
Yeah, you can turn off the M dashes. I recently did that. But I had a situation recently where I was emailing with someone and they said, is this actually Scott? This sounds like an AI generated thing. And it gave me pause to say, okay, I need to write and be careful about writing in a way that actually sounds like me. The second thing I think that's really important in terms of AI writing is it's important that you do the first draft and then you go to kind of AI. Because if you just like AI write this, then it often is going to write in a way that sounds like a robot. So I think AI is an optimizer. It can make an existing human product better, but also sometimes it can make it worse. And I think in our AI slop world, being human and even having sometimes like typos or things that are clear that a human actually wrote this can make you come off a little bit more personable.
Right. I love that. I'm going to have to start making it make mistakes, or like when I do my cut and paste, misspell a word or something like that. Okay, this is totally unrelated, but I'm just very curious. You are in Canada, and there are words that you spell differently because of the I guess it'd be now the King's English. We always said the Queen's English for a long time. Does it automatically know you're in Canada and spell those words differently for you?
It does. You can change your Microsoft Word, or I think ChatGPT knows from where I am. It uses like Canadian spelling. So yes, AI is able to, in my context, they'll use Canadian spelling. And often, because it knows a lot about me, the ChatGPT, it will often default to the Canadian like answer for things rather than American.
I love it. And actually my point in that is it is adapting, which is a little bit scary. But it's also nice that, you don't have to look for those. But it's funny. I was in a mastermind group yesterday and we were talking about this. And what we were really talking about was that as good as AI is, it does not know how to develop and build relationships, which is how we do business. And I know that's kind of one of the skills that you talk about, that the young, old, whatever generation, we need to really start focusing, and keep focusing on. So talk to us a little bit more about that.
In the uncertainty advantage, the sixth pillar of my book is the importance of building a network that is really resilient and that works for you. And in a world of rapid change, I think it's more important than ever to invest in relationships with other people, because relationships are what are going to help you be more resilient when you have setbacks and challenges. And likewise, relationships, the quality of your network, are what will provide you access to interesting opportunities that can help you accelerate in your career.
Right.
Some of the frameworks that I talk about in the uncertainty advantage on how you can learn to develop a better network include the importance of creating a personal advisory board. So that's not a formal board of directors for yourself, but it's getting like 6 or 7 people and kind of thinking, who's my career advisor? Who's my role model? Who's my like life advisor? And thinking through who are these different people that you go to for advice when you face different kinds of questions. AI isn't necessarily really skilled at this broader holistic sense of relationships, although it can help you deal with tricky situations. Like sometimes I've had email threads where there's tension.
Yeah. Or I've written and I know it's snarky. And I'm like, oh, that's not what I should say, but I just can't write it any other way.
Totally. And then sometimes I'll put into AI, like make this less aggressive, make it friendlier, make it more respectful. And so I find sometimes in situational cases, AI can actually be really helpful. But you as a human really need to think holistically about your broader relationships and to be intentional and to invest time in fostering those relationships.
So how do you find those relationships? And I say that because I think this has kind of always been the case. There is a divide between the, shall we say, more mature people and the younger generation. Part of it is, I think, well, what would I have to discuss with them? And so how do you develop those great relationships?
Some of the things I talk about in the uncertainty advantage are first being clear about your weak ties versus your strong ties.
Okay.
So your weak ties are your acquaintances, people you might know just broadly. And then your strong ties are like your best friends, your family. And it's important to be differentiated in your two different kind of approaches. With regards to weak ties, some of my advice are first, always get out there and connect and meet with new people. Constantly grow and expand your network. If you're in a job where you're dealing with the same people week over week, think about every week about scheduling a call with like a stranger. And one of the things I've loved in my work over the last 12 years is I every week meet new people. And over time, that's meant that I've met thousands and thousands of people, probably like 8,000 people over the last 10 plus years. And if you're not in that kind of role, you need to be intentional about constantly growing kind of your network. Second piece of advice that's really important in terms of kind of weak ties is thinking about systemic ways that you can keep in touch with people who are weak ties. So for me, there's 2 things that I do. The first is around social media and in particular using LinkedIn to try to post like twice a week just to keep people kind of in touch. The second is creating a newsletter, which I don't send weekly. I send it just once a month, and it includes just general updates. Sometimes it's some life updates. It's the most interesting things that I found over the last month. And I try to add value. And that goes out to over 2,000 people that I know. And it's an efficient way to keep in touch with a large number of weak ties. With regard to the strong ties, how can you foster relationships with them? I think one really tactical piece of advice is going through your Google Photos or your whatever photo storage app you have every day. And there's the photo memories, and go through those photo memories and then send people pictures as you see them. And then it's really efficient.
We did whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you don't even need to say anything. You just send them a random picture if you just want to be really efficient. And I really love this idea because it's a good way to just reinforce and strengthen your deep ties. And then you just think constantly about just sending little texts to people as they come into your mind. And in doing so, those little gestures build social will, invite people over for dinner. I think just being intentional about investing in your strong ties through beyond just text, but like socializing and going out there. And that's my advice on a differentiated approach to weak ties and to strong ties.
Right. And they're going to move back and forth, right? Sometimes your weak tie ends up being the best contact at a company or, something like that. So in February, I interviewed a guest who, her name is Elizabeth Cottrell, and what she talked about, and I mean, this was incredible. She talked about, and now she's even more mature than me, but she talked about the importance of writing, as in picking up a pen and writing short notes to people. She said 2 sentences, right? It doesn't have to be, war and peace. And, and if you're not able to write, there's, card services online, all sorts of things. I mean, a lot of ways to do this. But she said, whether it's personal or professional, sending those notes. And so maybe it's, thank you so much for, having coffee with me yesterday. And then, you might mention a book that you read or something like that. And the key to that is the fact that we don't get those. And so they stand out. I mean, I've got one here on my desk that my best friend sent me just last week. I just received this. And I've known her since we were 6. I won't say how long that was, but it's a really long time. And this is the first time she actually sent me a note. And in essence, it was, thank you for being my friend. And, and it will be in a place of honor forever. I save those handwritten notes. They're on my bulletin board, and my bulletin board's not that big. So that shows, and so what I did, and it just hasn't, the order has not arrived yet. I ordered personalized note cards, right? So not stationary, not I have to write a whole bunch, but it's a way to kind of deepen or strengthen some of those relationships.
Yeah, I love that idea. The personalized stationery, I think, is an amazing one. I have friends who do that, and it's always nice to get little cards from them when they come over to dinner. They always have like a gift, and it's like personalized stationery. And also just giving people personalized gifts. Books are a great idea because they're really personal when you give someone a book. I mean, this was somewhat more self-centered, but when my book came out, I sent it to like 75
yes. Oh, yeah.
last year. And wrote personal notes in everyone. I felt like I was running a little bit of a like a e-commerce store for a day because I just had this big margin
overwhelmed, right?
of books. But I felt I strengthened relationships with a lot of people through sending them this book, and it was a gesture that I think people really did appreciate, and it was helpful then also for getting the word out about the book within the week of a book launch.
Right.
But I think really showing up
with a physical book is they can read it and then share it with someone.
Totally. Yeah. And that's where I'm a big fan. If someone's ever listening and they have a book that's coming out, it's important to send a lot of physical books to your closest friends and family and people you think who will promote the book, because that's one of the main ways you get the word out initially. And you don't know where those physical books will go to. Sometimes I have a little library that we built in front of our house, and it's like those little tiny ones.
Yes, I love those.
And occasionally every like maybe 3 or 4 months, I'll sneak a copy of my book into the little library. And then I'll sometimes think it's kind of like you're putting a bottle with a secret message into the ocean. Yeah. And then it always disappears, but I'm like, oh, I wonder where that book, what home it ended up being in.
Well, and the fun thing about it is they don't know that you're the author.
No.
And so, but it shows that it was something that they were interested in.
Yeah, totally.
I love it. I love it. And I love these and of course we got out of doing the personal stuff during COVID, right?
Yeah.
And especially meeting people in person. And as you were talking about this, I looked back and years ago, I way back, I interviewed the author of 52 Cups of Coffee. How funny, you pick up your coffee cup, just as I was saying that. And she talks about doing the exact same thing that you're talking about. She set out and like I said, it's been years since I have talked with her, but she said every week she would try to have a cup of coffee. And this was long enough ago that it truly was in person. but with somebody she never really connected with. Might have been somebody that she read about in the newspaper or met at a networking event and just said, hey, let's go out for more. And now, of course, the cool thing is you can do this virtually. I had a virtual lunch last week with a couple people who are all local, but it was just too hard for us to get together physically. So we got together on Zoom, and learned just a little bit more about each other in a relaxed way.
Yeah, I love that. And I think there's no replacement for in-person socializing, as well as there's no replacement for just like connecting with other people, sometimes like virtually as well, and being able to kind of share and build, relationships with other people. And we're such social creatures. And I think that it is so important for like our well-being that we build relationships with other people. There's tons of career benefits of like building a great network, but also it's really important for our souls that we aren't like isolated hermits. There's a reason why one of the biggest punishments that people can give to a prisoner is to put them in solitary confinement. It's because it like rots our souls when we're too isolated from other people.
Right. Oh yeah, COVID was really hard for me. And I have health concerns, and so I had to stay isolated far longer than many people. And that was hard. I mean, I am very much a social butterfly. And, here in the States, we lock down pretty hard. Now in Atlanta or Georgia itself, really, they let up the restrictions fairly soon. But we, 2 weeks into it, I'm going stir crazy. My husband's like, I'm going to kill her. And so we started going for drives and just getting out, and I, in many cases never got out of the car. We'd order drive-through food or pack our own or do whatever. But yeah, just having to stay in that. And it's funny because now I'll look at my schedule and I'll think, I didn't leave the house all week. But that was my choice, right? But when we're forced to not do that, and so I created an online networking group during that time, and we did fold. I mean, it kind of served its purpose, but it was just so that we could, talk with other people during that time.
Yeah, I also participated in a peer group that was virtual through the worst of the pandemic that lasted for around 3 years. And then I feel like once in-person stuff resumed, it kind of also just like went away. But that group had a huge impact on me. I have a couple of people who ended up becoming really close friends. And what you also said resonated in a sense that I work from home most of the time. And I can have days, especially where it's freezing here in Canada. It's been like minus like 10 degrees Fahrenheit on some days that I just have not left the house for days almost. And I don't feel that bad because I know then I might have 2 days where I'm in person the entire time. But it's about having choice. And that's what agency and freedom and that ability to choose kind of your schedule and your ability to hang out with people in person, I think is a big part of it. When you feel like you're locked in, it's very frustrating.
Right. And you talk about getting out and meeting people. And I was just thinking, I don't do nearly as much in-person networking as I did before COVID for, a variety of reasons. But when I think about those groups, it's mostly my peers age-wise, right? And so how as someone in a younger generation, now, first of all, you're going to stand out, right? If you go because you're just younger than anybody else. But first, why aren't, people of younger generations going to in-person networking? Or, how do they start doing that?
I think one of the most effective ways that you can grow your interpersonal or business network isn't necessarily like going to networking events all the time, but it's more about being intentional of like one-on-one kind of contact over time. And that's why I really think going out and being like, okay, every week I'm going to meet a new person. Over time that compounds. And sometimes you can meet great people through networking events, but I feel like in my life, how I really grow my network is just one-on-one conversations. Then you start to meet kind of groups and you end up having a much larger social network over time. When I first moved to Toronto, I never lived here. I moved here when I was 23. I knew pretty much zero people in Toronto.
Right.
Now I know
Boy.
a ton of people. And that first summer, I just felt like I was like constantly meeting up with people. And it was a little bit exhausting, but now I know thousands of people in Toronto. And it's kind of cool when you think,
Right.
when you move to a new place and you know no one, and then all of a sudden, years later, you know all of these people. It's a testament to that persistence of just constantly putting yourself out there and not being afraid to meet a lot of different people. With any new relationship, there's a risk of rejection.
Right.
And I think a big part of growing your social network is being okay that not everyone's going to like you. And that what's important is you put yourself out there.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. We moved from Denver to Atlanta almost 14 years ago. And we knew almost a year in advance that we were going to be moving. And so I used LinkedIn extensively. We kind of figured out what part of town we were going to live in. And so I could put in that zip code, excuse me, and then say, find professionals. And I did not care what they did, what their job title was, any of that. I just thought, okay, let's build my network. And so I sent them notes or request to connect on LinkedIn. And I thought, okay, I have to, and I tell people, unless you really know them, you need to still give them a reason, remind them you met them, whatever. And so in my request to connect, I would say moving from Denver to Atlanta, in May of 2013, just building my network, would love to connect with you. Every single person connected. And I would do just a couple a week because I didn't want to get overwhelmed, right? And then when I moved, I reached back out to them. Hey, I'm here now. Can I take you out for a cup of coffee? Back to that coffee thing, right? We're just like caffeinated people. I would like to take you out for a cup of coffee and learn more about what you do. Again, nobody turned me down. I made fabulous connections. And I bought the coffee once. Now it is the South, right? So people are very polite here, but everybody always, and they would treat me, but it was, you can do that with one person a day, one person a week, whatever, but it was a conscious effort to build my network.
Yeah. And I think that step-by-step kind of approach over time, that ends up, you now know a ton of people in your neighborhood, and meeting up with people over coffee, like over time. And I do think there's a reason why people say like meet up over coffee. There's something perfect about those third spaces and coffee shops that make those initial kind of relationships like a fertile ground to expand to something more.
Right. And, it is a safe place, especially if you're a woman, right? But yeah, I mean, nobody thinks anything about saying, hey, Scott, let's go to Starbucks. That's just,
Yep.
and it's a great way to meet people, and I still will look through, if somebody comments on one of my LinkedIn posts and I'm not connected with them, I will almost always send them a request to connect, because there was something there that they liked, but yeah, I tell people, one of the LinkedIn is there for a reason, right? And, you should be using it to expand your contacts. And I love that you say, post a couple times a week, partially because the algorithm likes that, right? You're going to come up higher in the searches and things like that. But it also reminds people that you exist.
Yeah, totally. They see it. And there's lots of people who sometimes I'll run into and they'll say, oh yeah, I see your stuff on LinkedIn.
Right.
And
they never comment.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they don't comment, but they see that I've just put, they're like, oh, I really like your content. And it's nice to, there's a value. Sometimes I'm like, okay, it takes a lot of time writing this post, but there is a lot of value to kind of keeping connected, and that's how you can grow your network. And it's not being, sometimes you need to take a break from it, and it's posting when you want to, but I find that I never really have that much shortage of content to post that I think is like, interesting. And the amount of people then that I meet off LinkedIn who reach out to me in direct message, like I sometimes feel it's amazing. Sometimes people will make fun of LinkedIn as like cheesy, kind of a bit as a social network, but I found LinkedIn has been amazing for meeting people. And for me, it's been definitely my most active and fruitful social network.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I tried the same thing on Facebook when we were going to move, hey, getting ready to move to Atlanta. Now I did gain some people, but nobody wanted to get together, all of those things. And of course, Facebook is more, and I'm putting this in my air quotes, right? Social.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I mean, the contacts that I met on LinkedIn 13 years ago, some of them I still connect with every day. And so, but it's a challenge, and obviously networking in person is, you have to go into it with a plan. I've shared this before on the program. I went to a networking thing in Denver one time, and there's, a group of us standing around talking, and this woman rushes up and thrusts her business card at every single one of us and then starts to leave. And we're like, you're here to network. Tell us, and she said, "Oh, I bet my husband that I couldn't give away my entire box of new business cards today." And then she left. And to a person, we threw that card away. And I thought, well, she just wasted whatever she spent on those cards. If she'd made 2 or 3 good contacts, that would have been so beneficial. But she clearly knew and didn't know what to do. And so that's one of the things, is you have to go about it with intent.
Yeah, 100%. And building authentic relationships, it's not about going out and just the number of people but it's thinking about being authentic and ultimately about giving first. One of the things I talk about in the Uncertainty Advantage is the importance of being a giver and a strategic giver. And I reference Adam Grant's fantastic book, Give and Take, and the importance of being generous, because ultimately, according to Adam Grant's research, the most successful people are those who are the most generous.
Right.
But they're not generous to a fault. They're not generous to the point of burnout.
They're not giving away. Right.
They're thinking about efficient ways to help other people. So for me, often that's intros. Even yesterday, I met with someone who had recently left a job, and then I thought, this is another good person for this person to connect with as he explores new employment opportunities. And I made that intro. And I find just quick little things like that can make a huge difference at helping people get their next steps. And who knows, one intro can sometimes change someone's life. But I'm mindful of sometimes big asks, because if you just are so generous all your time, you have no time left in the day for the most important things. So it's important to be generous. Don't be a taker, but be generous with guardrails.
Right. And it's funny because humans, reciprocity is something that's kind of built into us.
Yeah.
If you do something for me, then I feel obligated to do something for you. And I say that, kind of tongue in cheek. We want it to be more in a good way, right? Hey, you introduced me to somebody. I thought about this great book that I thought you should know about, right? So it's more, in a very positive way, as opposed to, I feel obligated that I need to do something, because then it's not going to be authentic. And it's probably not even anything that's meaningful. You introduced me to somebody, so I feel like I have to introduce you to somebody else, and I'm not even going to think about it, right? But yeah, the reciprocity, that does exist.
Oh, totally. It's the foundation of trust is reciprocity.
Right.
And sometimes I'm reluctant to help people who I feel like haven't been as reciprocal. If they've really not been reciprocal, then I just won't help them. But if they've been moderately reciprocal, then I'll be like, okay, I'll still help. Right. But then I'll have limits. If I feel like I'm not in a reciprocal relationship, at a certain point, I'll just disengage. And I think most people are like that.
Yeah. Yeah. If I've done, 5 things for you and you've not done, it's, or even just one, it's, and sometimes it's what they did. If they said, thank you, then more than likely I'm going to do something again. If they didn't acknowledge it at all, then I'm probably not going to do it again. And so there's that. But you've got a lot of this in your book, and I love your book. And again, it's called The Uncertainty Advantage. And as I said, you wrote it for younger demographics, but everything in it applies to everybody. Why did you decide to write the book?
I was passionate about writing the book because in my 20s, I saw firsthand that fear of uncertainty was a huge thing that held me back. I was just thinking about this the other day, that so much of my teenage years and my 20s, I just was like constantly anxious all the time. At points, it was like debilitating. That's to say, I still sometimes have anxiety today, but I found that in the last couple of years, I am generally like more baseline relaxed than way at any other point in my life. The second reason why I was motivated to write this book is because I saw firsthand that in my work and venture for Canada, where I've supported thousands of people to launch their careers across the country, that fear of uncertainty is the most common thing that holds people back. And that is particularly troublesome in a world where where things are super uncertain. And the third reason is that in the pandemic, I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, which sometimes people think it's just like washing your hands, and sometimes it can be like that in more mild cases. But I had really severe OCD symptoms that I had horrible levels of anxiety where I couldn't sleep for like days. I could barely leave the house. I really struggled to function. It was almost actually this time 5 years ago that I went through my like worst kind of period.
Oh, during COVID. Oy.
Oh yeah, during COVID, it was brutal. And I ended up going through exposure visual prevention therapy. And over almost 2 years, it took me to fully feel better. The treatment lasts a couple of months. But eventually I ended up feeling way better and developed almost becoming, I feel like, a new version of myself. And while most people don't have OCD, the core of OCD is fear of uncertainty and is trying to control the future through compulsive behavior.
Control.
Yeah, we want control. And, even that one of the things that was really helpful for me from that experience was recognizing there's so much we can't control. And there's a degree of just accepting what we can't control.
Right.
Even there's someone who I know that the person was doing some things that I found kind of frustrating and some life decisions that maybe were a little questionable. And what I thought to myself is, okay, I can only control my actions here. I can't control what this person is going to do. So don't worry about it. And well, it might be frustrating, but focus on what I can control, which is my own actions. And so much of, I think, developing a better relationship with uncertainty is accepting that bad things can happen. And it's accepting that there's a lot of things that we don't fundamentally control. And it took me a long, long time to really fully get that. And sometimes I can still struggle with it. But I think accepting the uncertainty and the uncontrollable was a really important journey for me in learning to develop a better relationship with uncertainty.
I love that, and I love that in your book you share your story, because we have to be authentic. But what it does is when somebody reads it, they go, "Wow, he's a real person." They might not have the same concerns, but they're thinking he is a real person. And I think that's sometimes where we get a little caught up is, and it's the control thing again, right? I will be what I need to be for that situation. And sometimes that's true to who we are, and many times it's not. It's funny. I mentioned that I don't go to a lot of networking events anymore, and I used to go to 2 or 3 a week.
Wow.
And part, and I really, when COVID hit, I had all this free time, right? And it was like, okay, well, what am I going to do with it? But now when I look at it, and I've mentioned, I am clearly very social, but I look and I still belong to all those organizations. They're great business organizations. I think that's great to support them because they're local. But I look at the pictures that they post, right, of their events, and I think, I don't know anybody in those pictures. And part of me thinks, so why would I want to go? I don't know anybody. And of course, that's why I should go, because they don't know me either. But it does become so much easier. I tell people, I don't want to put shoes on, so why am I going to leave, But yeah, I think we all have those times where we think, nope, not going to go there.
And sometimes it's okay to invest in just being like alone too. Like I think
Right.
while emphasizing growing your network, I'm definitely can be more introverted, and sometimes I want quiet time. This past Saturday night, there was a party we were invited to. There was going to be like 60 people there, and it was really cold. It was like minus 25. It was freezing. And I just kind of came home from being away for 2.5 months. And so I've been back for less than 2 weeks. And I just thought to myself, nope, you know what? I don't want to drive, or I don't want to go like 45 minutes to this party. And I just want to be cozy and stay in tonight. And part of me was thinking of the book and the advice that I give, which is about putting yourself out there and growing your network. But also sometimes you just have to like know yourself, and it's okay to spend quiet time.
Right.
I think it's about balance.
Right. Yeah, because we've all gone to things that we felt forced to go to, whether it's, well, I paid, or I'm going to make good contacts there, or whatever it is. And then it shows, even somebody like me, I will go in and find the one person there that I know and never leave their side, or whatever it is, and so we have to want to do it. And of course, the tricky thing is it does get easier to not go, right? And to rationalize, I got work to do. I don't want to put shoes on, whatever it is. And so I guess I need to start getting back out there, but strategically again, right?
Yeah, I agreed. And I do think it's important to not be too much of a hermit. And that's why it's important to put yourself out there. And I think more people have a tendency to be too by themselves than people have a tendency to be too social. Yeah.
Right. So in your book, and you've mentioned you've got these 6 pillars for thriving. Now, we're not going to talk about all 6 because I don't want to give them all away. We want people to buy the book. But I love that one of them, and we've already kind of alluded to this, is that self-compassion. So let's talk about that just a little bit more.
Self-compassion has 3 kind of core elements. The first is the importance of speaking to yourself in a kind way. The second is being mindful of your emotions. And the third is the importance of recognizing your shared humanity. And this is from Dr. Kristen Neff, who kind of popularized the concept of self-compassion in North America. And I think it's really important in an age of uncertainty to have self-compassion because a lot can go wrong. And uncertainty means risk, and it means that there can be chaos. And I think ultimately being kind to yourself isn't about woo-woo softness. It's actually about making yourself like more resilient and happy, and ultimately more comfortable with risk-taking. That I've observed, and studies show that those who are the most self-compassionate are the most willing to take risks. They're the most willing to build things. And if you're extremely hard on yourself, if you're constantly self-critical, then you're less likely to be actually like a builder. And in an age of uncertainty, you need to embrace risk-taking. So some advice I have on how you can foster self-compassion is, first and foremost, if you're having a difficult situation, you're beating yourself up and you're being hard on yourself, first, just label it. Second, is really think about, if I was in a situation and I was talking with a really good friend and they were going through the same thing, what would I say to my friend right now? And often we can be way harder on ourselves than we are with our...
Oh, yeah. We call ourselves stupid. We call ourselves idiots. We say we can't do that, whatever it is. And nobody would say that to us, usually.
Yeah, totally. Often we're brutal on ourselves. And the self-compassion pillar is the first pillar of the book, because in my experience, especially with ambitious young people, the biggest kind of area of development related to developing by relationship with uncertainty is often simply just being more kind to oneself.
Right. And knowing I can do this.
Yeah.
I've got this. And I think it's interesting. A lot of what I've been studying recently is that we have got to stop using the word fail, right? I failed at that. I didn't get any connections or whatever, didn't meet anybody at that business event. And instead think of it as learning. Maybe it wasn't the right group. Maybe I didn't step out of my corner. Whatever it is, and because fail is such a negative word, so we need to think about it in the positive ways. How am I going to learn from this?
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I think it's something that's really important. And in my book, I talk about intelligent failures, and that those who are the most impactful are those who think about failures about how do you learn from the experience. And it's also important to emphasize that not all failures are created equal.
Right.
That Amy Edmondson has a great book called The Right Side of Wrong. And in it, she talks about intelligent failures, which are failures that weren't easily avoidable, failures where you learn a lot, and failures that don't wipe you out. And there can be less intelligent failures, which are ones that wipe you out, or ones that were really avoidable, or things that you learn nothing from. All to say is that all failures not necessarily created equal. And I think sometimes the commentary on failure, especially in startup ecosystems, is like fail fast. It doesn't matter. Failure is really tough. It has an impact on our self-esteem. It can hurt our relationships with other people. It can hurt our finances. It can hurt our professional reputation. All to say is that failure is something that you want to be careful about. And I encourage people to think about their careers of what is an intelligent failure versus what is a potentially less intelligent failure.
Right. And I tell people, as long as nobody died, it's probably going to be okay. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, like, we might make a decision that wipes out all of our finances, or I saw somebody that the other day, and I'll be honest, I did this too. The controversial posts on social, right? And that's kind of the nice thing about LinkedIn. You don't really see things like that there. You see them on Facebook and the other things. And some people posted some things over because of the Super Bowl, and specifically because of the halftime program, right? And they were so horrific, that I thought, I'm just not. I don't want to be their friend, their face, and then we always see those people who, a day, a week, a year, look back and go, oh my God, I can't believe I did that, or they blame it on somebody else, but that's a totally different story, right? But and so that's an avoidable thing. Yeah, you might feel very strongly about something, but step away from the keyboard. But at the same point, be authentic. I mean, I was talking with a gentleman one time who has very strong political views, very strong. And he said, do you think, he said, and I feel like I need to tell the world about it. Okay. He's being authentic to himself, right? He said, do you think it will cost me clients? And I said, undoubtedly, it will cost you clients. But the people that it costs you might not, it's coming back to what we were saying before, those people might not have been your people anyway. Now, that's kind of a catch-22, right? Should you be posting those things? But, and I've shared this on the program before. I was working with a young woman on LinkedIn, very young. She was just graduating from college. And she had a T-shirt on in her LinkedIn photo, which I don't always advise, but, but it said proud Muslim. And she asked me about it. And I said, honestly, if somebody has a problem with that, you probably don't want to be working with them. And I said, so, I said, I'm not sure I would do it. And I'm, but yeah, I mean, if they're not your people, they're not your people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's being okay. Like, sometimes you're going to have some people just dislike you for being you.
Right.
And that's the world, unfortunately. And I think there's a benefit where when you lean in to be more authentic, that you're more going to be more successful. I think that there's always a line of authenticity, and sometimes people can be punished for being authentic. One of the things I talk about in the book is the importance of, I think, leaning in and embracing your authentic self, and in doing so that you can take more risks. When I was just graduating from university, I came out of the closet for the first time. And within like a year of that, I quit my job at Goldman Sachs to go found Venture for Canada. And I don't think I necessarily would have had the courage or risk-taking capacity to make that extremely bold move if it wasn't for the fact that I'd also leaned in to be more authentic. Now,
right.
One thing I would say with guardrails is I think sometimes some young people can hear the authenticity part and think, okay, that means I can go take a bath at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday while I'm at work. So there's a line between authenticity and appropriate workplace behavior. But I do think that being authentic is something that can help you build better relationships with other people. And even in my case, I found in public speaking and doing podcasts like this, in the past, I would be more nervous and think I need to prepare a lot and have everything perfect. And instead, what I try to do more is talk with folks like I would normally talk with a friend somewhat. And I found that just being authentic or treating it like a typical conversation is really helpful at being like less stressed out, but also just more effective because I'm not stumbling over my words. I'm not all stressed out. And so someone once told me that public speaking should be called private speaking. It's about figuring out how to speak publicly like you would speak privately.
Right. And like we said, sometimes they're just not your people. I do a lot of interviews on podcasts based on my experience as a 3-time cancer survivor. And, and so I'm talking about inspiration, things like that. And I call myself a warrior because I'm in the fight for my life. And so I am a warrior. And I talk about the importance of building your tribe and things like that. And I had someone who told me, oh no, because you use that word, I will not have you on my podcast. And my first thought was, bleh. And then I thought it wouldn't have gone well. I mean, and so then and she was just clearly not my people.
Yeah.
And that was perfectly fine. I was a little bent out of shape for maybe 5 minutes. And then the rational part of my brain kicked in and went, no, it just wouldn't have gone well. Because I would have felt like I couldn't be authentic, or she would have felt like she had to ask different questions, whatever it was, it just wasn't going to work.
Yeah, and that's part of, I think, life and growing older. I feel like in my 30s that I'm now more comfortable just saying, okay, that person doesn't like me and moving on. Versus in my 20s, it would get me more upset or I would fixate on. That's impressive.
If you're a cool person or, right?
Totally. Yeah. That's impressive. I mean, to be a 3-time cancer survivor.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, it's and now, I mean, that is part of who I am. And that is, we have to embrace those things of ours, and because they are all part of who we are. And when we try to not be that, then we're living in a state of uncomfortability.
Yeah. I'm on the point on, traumatic things, which is, having cancer, most people would consider as like a, kind of a traumatic experience in the sense that I once read this line that resonated with me, which is that it is, when you have traumatic things, it's you don't graduate from them, it's you move forward with them. And that ultimately, I think when you're, open and talking about being a cancer survivor, that's like a healthier relationship than if you just like pretended like you never had cancer and you like put it in a box. I've never had cancer, but in challenge, part of the reason I wrote this book, and there's a degree to which that OCD experience really was like a very traumatic. Like I felt it broke my world. I never thought I would have an acute mental health challenge. And for me, part of writing this book, The Uncertainty Advantage, which is where I talk really candidly about the darkest point of my life, and I continue to talk about it, is A, raising more awareness about mental health, but B, there's a degree of my own kind of coping, and ultimately, I think you're moving forward with more power,
yes,
and authenticity, where you don't ignore that challenging thing, but you actually say, how can I learn from that, and how can that learning then help other people?
Right.
And I think it's been something that has been really helpful for me, and it's one of the reasons I'm still like I feel very motivated by this topic of uncertainty because it's personal for me.
Right. And back to what we were saying, you're taking back that control.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, well, I want to quickly talk about one more of your pillars, because we've only got about 5 minutes left, and that's generalist skills. And I love this because we get so caught up in focusing on, a specific thing that we forget that there's all these other things that we need to learn in order to function in business and also in life. So talk to us just briefly about that.
Yeah, I think in an era of AI, it's particularly important for folks to lean in to embracing their general skills. And generalist skills are ones that you need whether you're working in the public sector or the private sector or in a startup. And they include skills like communications, public speaking, teamwork. And you develop those skills through through working in teams, through joining a Toastmasters group. And I think you're going to have in general skills be more important than technical skills. And you're going to have technical skills increasingly get automated away through AI. So if you want to have a career that is really impactful, I encourage you to be intentional in developing these general skills like public speaking, like collaboration, because those are the skills that are going to help you survive and thrive in an AI-dominated world.
Right. Right. You mentioned public speaking. You might work in an office where everybody's at their computer, right? And all of a sudden you have to give a presentation. That might be to 10 people, it might be to 100, and you're thinking, oh, right? But if you have worked on your public speaking skills, you're going to be able to do that. And so yeah, it's just all these things that we don't always think. Well, I'm never going to need that. Well, yeah, sometimes you do.
Yeah, 100%. And we're all communicating all the time. And investing in your public speaking skills, your communication skills are probably some of the most important things that you can do in your life and career.
I love it. I love it. Well, oh my gosh, Scott, I definitely need to have you on again because this has been so fascinating. And like I said, it's for anybody, whether you've been in your career 20 minutes, 20 years, whatever it is, everything that you talk about is the uncertainty advantage is so important. But for people who were thinking, okay, I need to talk to Scott, how do they find you and what are the services that you provide?
The first step that I would recommend is to do a short quiz on my website where you'll gain an understanding of your current relationship with uncertainty, because that's the first step of learning to develop a better relationship with uncertainty. The quiz takes like 2 minutes, and you can visit it by going to Scott Stirrett, so that's SCOTTSTI 2 R's e2ts.com/quiz, or you just go to my website and it says quiz right on the top.
And we'll put a link to it.
And I recommend you fill out that quiz and you get your results. And on my website, there's background on my other services and the work that I do, which includes kind of consulting and public speaking. And lastly, if you also want to learn more about me, I recommend you check me out on Substack, where I send out that note once a month, and it's a great way to keep in touch.
I love it. I love it. And for those of us who are old and not on Substack, you email it, right? So I can sign up and get it that way. This really has been absolutely fascinating because it is an uncertain world. And sometimes it's like, I'm just going to pull the covers over my head and go back to sleep. But we can't do that. And so what are the things that we're going to do to make sure that we can survive and thrive?
Yeah, and uncertainty is not going away anytime soon. In many ways, I think uncertainty is just going to continue to accelerate. Certainly 2026 has been a year with a lot of uncertainty already.
Right.
And sometimes I think that the pandemic had a lot of uncertainty. And I think post-pandemic, the uncertainty did not go away. It just changed in different ways. So I would encourage you as a listener don't choose the era that you live in, but you can choose what is your relationship with uncertainty. And if you're interested in this content, I recommend you check out The Uncertainty Advantage. It's available wherever you buy your books. And I wish you all the best as you look to turn uncertainty into an advantage in your lives and careers.
I love it. I love it. Well, I always like to ask my guests for one final thought. And that was a pretty good final thought. But do you have anything else you would like to leave everyone with?
One final thought that I would have is that there are risks in not taking risks in life. And I think a lot of times people just think about the risk of a decision. But whether you're thinking about launching a new business or you're thinking about starting a new job or moving to a new place, there's always risks in not taking risks. And I think one of the saddest things in life is when people don't fulfill their full potential. It's one of the reasons I'm motivated to this book and the work that I do. So I would encourage folks to just think about take more risk in your life. Obviously, everyone has different limitations, socioeconomic realities, but I think that the more people feel emboldened to take smart, calculated risks, the more that everyone can fulfill their full potential, particularly in a world that's really uncertain, where I think risk-taking is going to become more important than ever before.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having so much fun talking with Scott Stirrett. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.